The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Earth's moon picked up the signal at 3:47 hours. It was faint, distorted, and unlike anything in the database. Officer Tom Reed was about to finish his shift when the alert flashed across his screen. "What the hell?" he muttered, adjusting the frequency. The signal pulsed again, stronger this time. Not random noise. Not natural cosmic radiation. This was a pattern. A message. Reed's fingers moved quickly across the console. Central. This is Moonbase Delta. I'm picking up an anomalous transmission from Sector 17, Quadrant 9. You need to see this. Within hours, the United Defense Coalition headquarters buzzed with activity. Scientists, military personnel, and government officials crowded around displays showing the signal analysis. Admiral Wilson, head of the UDC Space Command, stood at the center of the room, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of holographic projections. "It's definitely artificial," said Dr. Lisa Clark, the lead xenolinguist. "And it's not one of ours." The room fell silent. Humanity had been sending signals into space for nearly 2 centuries, but this was the first clear response that wasn't from a human colony. "Can you decode it?" Wilson asked. "Partially," Clark replied. "It repeats in cycles. We believe it's a distress call." "From who?" Wilson's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed concern. "Unknown. But the message contains mathematical sequences that couldn't occur naturally. Whoever sent this is intelligent, and they're in trouble." Wilson nodded slowly. "How far?" "The signal originates from the Epsilon Eridani system, about 10.5 light-years away." Wilson turned to his military advisor. "Options. The U.S. Sentinel could reach that system in 3 months using the new fusion drive," said Colonel Frank Harris. "It's our fastest scout ship." "And who's commanding it now?" "Captain James Walker." Wilson's expression changed slightly. Those who knew him recognized it as rare approval. "Walker. Good." Captain James Walker was eating breakfast in his quarters when the call came. At 42, Walker had the lean build of someone who spent more time in variable gravity than planetside. His dark hair was cut short, and a thin scar ran across his right cheek, a souvenir from a pirate raid on Mars Colony when he was a lieutenant. "Captain, Admiral Wilson requests your presence at UDC headquarters immediately." Walker didn't ask why. In his 20 years of service, he'd learned that when an admiral called, you moved. 3 hours later, Walker stood in Wilson's office, studying the signal data. "We're sending the Sentinel to investigate," Wilson said. "This could be first contact, or it could be a trap. Either way, I need someone who can handle both diplomacy and combat if necessary." Walker nodded. "When do we leave?" "You have 48 hours to assemble your team. Choose carefully, Walker. You'll be on your own out there." The next 2 days passed in a blur. Walker selected 7 crew members, each the best in their field. Dr. Ben Moore, cynobiologist. Lieutenant Alex Thompson, weapons specialist. Engineer Kate Miller. Communications expert Jack Davis. Security officer Mark Hill. Medical officer Dr. Anna Lee. And pilot Mike Foster. As the Sentinel prepared for departure, Walker stood on the observation deck, looking back at Earth. The blue planet hung like a jewel against the blackness of space. Whatever they found at Epsilon Eridani, Walker knew humanity would never be the same. "Captain, all systems ready." Foster's voice came through the comm. Walker took one last look at home. "Let's go find out who's calling for help." The Sentinel's engines flared to life, pushing the sleek ship away from Earth's orbit. As they accelerated toward the jump point, Walker reviewed the signal again. Something in its desperate rhythm unsettled him, a primal fear that transcended species and language barriers. Someone or something was in terrible danger, and humanity's response was on its way. 3 months of traveling through the cold emptiness of space had left the crew of the Sentinel restless. Captain Walker spent his days reviewing first contact protocols and his nights staring at the stars, wondering what waited for them. "Captain, we're approaching the Epsilon Eridani system. announced Mike Foster from the pilot's seat. Initial scans show 7 planets. The signal is coming from the third one. Walker moved to the main view screen. Take us in slowly. Keep shields at maximum. As they entered the system, the sensors began picking up more details. The third planet was slightly larger than Earth, with vast oceans and 2 small moons. But something was wrong. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy readings," said Lieutenant Thompson, frowning at her console. "And there are objects in orbit that don't look natural." "Ships?" Walker asked. "Yes, sir. Big ones. And they're firing on the planet." The view screen zoomed in, showing dark, angular vessels raining destruction on the world below. Bright flashes lit up the planet's surface as explosions tore through cities and forests. "Keep us at a distance," Walker ordered. "Stealth systems engage. I want to see what we're dealing with before we announce ourselves." For 2 days, the Sentinel observed from the shadow of the system's 5th planet. They watched as the attacking ships, which the crew had started calling raiders, landed troops on the surface and carried away resources and prisoners. "We've translated more of the distress signal," Jack Davis reported. "They call themselves the Lumari. Their message says they're peaceful explorers who have never developed weapons. They're being systematically hunted by a species they call the Void Runners." Walker's jaw tightened. "And the Void Runners?" "From what we can gather, they're a nomadic predator species. They find inhabited worlds, strip them of resources, and take the native population as slave labor." Dr. Moore spoke up. "Captain, we need to make contact with the Lumari. If we're going to help them, we need more information." "Agreed," Walker said. "But we can't just fly down there. Thompson, can you identify any Lumari resistance groups or safe zones?" Lieutenant Thompson studied the sensor readings. "There's an area in the northern mountain range with some kind of energy field blocking scans. The Void Runners have been bombing it but haven't breached it. That's our target," Walker decided. "Foster, get us close enough to send down a shuttle. Thompson, Davis, Moore, you're with me." Under the cover of darkness, their shuttle slipped through the planet's atmosphere. They landed in a dense forest near the mountains and hiked for hours until they reached a hidden entrance guarded by strange crystalline structures. Before they could approach, beams of light surrounded them, and a voice spoke directly into their minds. "You are not Void Runners. What are you?" Davis stepped forward. "We are humans from Earth. We received your distress call." The lights flickered, and suddenly the rock face opened, revealing a tunnel. Inside stood 3 tall, slender beings with pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly. Their large eyes studied the humans with wonder and fear. "You came," said one, its voice melodic and soft, "across the stars. For us. I'm Captain James Walker of the Earth ship Sentinel. We're here to help if we can." The tallest Lumari stepped forward. "I am Elder Thorn. For generations, we lived in peace, exploring our world and the stars near us. Then the Void Runners came. They destroy everything they touch. Our cities burn. Our people disappear into their ships. How many of you are left?" Moore asked gently. "Perhaps 10,000, Thorn said. "Once, we were millions." Walker looked at the desperate faces around him. Some were injured. All looked exhausted and hungry. "Why don't you fight back?" Thompson asked. "We have no weapons," Thorn explained. "No concept of war. This shield is our only defense, and it weakens daily." Walker made his decision then. He couldn't save this world alone, but he could bring back proof of what he'd found and convince Earth to help. "Elder Thorn, I need to contact my people. This is bigger than my ship can handle. But I promise you this, humanity will not stand by while your people are slaughtered." Thorn's large eyes brimmed with something like hope. "You would fight for us?" "Strangers. Sometimes," Walker said quietly. "Strangers are worth fighting for." Captain Walker paced the small communication room in the Lumari underground shelter. The encrypted message to Earth had been sent hours ago, containing all their findings about the Void Runners and the desperate situation of the Lumari people. Now they could only wait. "Do you think they'll help us?" Elder Thorn asked, his luminescent skin dimmed with worry. Walker paused. "I don't know. Humanity has never faced something like this before." Back on Earth, Admiral Wilson stood before the United Defense Coalition Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from all major nations, their faces grim as they watched footage from the Sentinels' recordings. "This is genocide," Wilson said plainly. "The Void Runners are systematically exterminating the Lumari." General Adams, head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. "It's tragic, but why should we involve ourselves in an alien war 10 light-years away?" "Because it won't stay 10 light-years away," replied Dr. Clark, pointing to a star chart. "Based on Captain Walker's data, the Void Runners have conquered 7 systems in the last 50 years. Their expansion trajectory puts Earth directly in their path within 3 decades. The room erupted in heated debate. Some council members argued for immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic approaches or suggested simply fortifying Earth's defenses. "We can't match their numbers," said the representative from the Asian Alliance. "Their fleet is enormous." "Numbers aren't everything," countered General Adams, his expression hardening. "We have something they've never encountered. Soldiers trained specifically for asymmetric warfare." Admiral Wilson nodded. "I propose activating Protocol Nemesis." The chamber fell silent. Protocol Nemesis was the UDC's most classified military contingency, the deployment of humanity's elite Ghost Legion. Created after the Mars Colony massacre, these were soldiers trained not just to fight but to instill fear in technologically superior enemies. "The Ghost Legion has never been deployed off-Earth," said the European representative. "We created them as a last resort. And now we need them," Wilson replied firmly. "The Void Runners have never faced resistance. They've only conquered peaceful species. Let's show them what happens when they face humanity." The council voted. It was close, but the decision was made. Earth would fight. On Thera, Walker's team had spent days gathering intelligence. They'd witnessed Void Runner troops rounding up Lumari citizens, seen the massive processing ships where resources and prisoners disappeared. The Void Runners themselves were tall, muscular beings with thick gray skin that seemed almost armored. They communicated through guttural sounds and moved with predatory efficiency. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth," Davis called out. Walker hurried to the makeshift communication station. Admiral Wilson's face appeared on the screen, tired but resolute. "Captain Walker, your report has been reviewed. The Council has authorized military intervention under Protocol Nemesis." Walker's breath caught. "Nemesis stir. That's extreme?" "Yes, but necessary. General Reed is assembling the Ghost Legion as we speak. They'll arrive in 4 months with a battle fleet. Until then, your orders are to gather intelligence and prepare the Lumari. Teach them to survive, Captain. Help is coming." When the transmission ended, Walker stood silent for a long moment. "What is it?" asked Dr. Moore, noticing his expression. "Earth is sending help," Walker said, "but not the kind I expected." That night, Walker explained to Elder Thorn what was coming. The Lumari listened with growing confusion as Walker described the Ghost Legion. "These soldiers," Thorn said slowly, "they are trained to kill." "To do whatever is necessary to win," Walker corrected. "The Void Runners have never faced an enemy that fights back. The Ghost Legion will exploit that." "We are a peaceful people, Captain," Thorn said, his voice troubled. "We have no concept of war." "I know," Walker replied softly. "That's why you're losing. But humans, we've been fighting wars since before we had written language. The Void Runners hunt the defenseless. They've never encountered a predator like us." As he spoke, the shelter shook from another bombardment above. Dust fell from the ceiling, and frightened Lumari children huddled closer to their parents. "We don't want to make you into warriors," Walker continued, watching the fear in their eyes. We just need you to survive until our people arrive." Thorne looked at the human captain with new understanding. "You are not like us. Perhaps that is exactly what we need now." Walker nodded grimly. The Void Runners thought they were the apex predators of the galaxy. They're about to learn they're wrong. Outside, the destruction of Thera continued, but now there was something the Void Runners couldn't see. Hope, burning in the hearts of the survivors, and the quiet preparation for humanity's most lethal response. General Marcus Reed stood in the massive hangar of Earth's orbital military station, watching as soldiers of the Ghost Legion boarded their transport ships. Each man and woman had been chosen for their exceptional skills, psychological resilience, and ability to adapt to alien environments. Many had served in Earth's most dangerous combat zones. All had volunteered for a mission they might never return from. "General, the Phantom Fleet is ready for your inspection," said Colonel Diana West, his second in command. Reed nodded and followed her to the viewing deck. Below them floated 12 sleek, dark warships, the most advanced vessels humanity had ever built. The flagship, Nemesis, was twice the size of the others, carrying not just weapons but factories capable of producing ammunition and equipment from raw materials they would find on Thera. "Are the prototype weapons loaded?" Reed asked. "Yes, sir. The void disruptors, plasma cannons, and adaptive shield technology are all installed and tested. We've also packed enough nanotech medical supplies to treat 10,000 casualties." Reed's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes revealed satisfaction. "And the AI combat systems. Atlas is fully operational on all ships. It's been loaded with all the data Captain Walker sent about Void Runner tactics." Reed checked his watch. "We launch in 3 hours. Get the troops settled in for cryosleep. Long journey ahead." As Colonel West left to carry out his orders, Reed remained at the window, staring at the fleet. In 30 years of military service, he had never commanded a mission like this. They would be the first humans to wage war beyond their solar system, against an enemy that had no idea what was coming. On Thera, the situation had grown more desperate. Captain Walker and his small team had managed to set up a network of hidden camps for Lumeri survivors, but they were constantly on the move to avoid Void Runner patrols. They're expanding their mining operations in the eastern continent, Lieutenant Thompson reported during their nightly meeting. "At this rate, they'll strip half the planet bare before the Legion arrives." Walker studied the maps they'd created, any pattern to their prisoner collection. Dr. Moore nodded grimly. "They're targeting the youngest and strongest Lumari. The processing ships take off every 12 days, fully loaded. We still don't know where they're taking them." Elder Thorne says they've located another group of survivors in the southern islands, Davis added. "About 300 Lumari hiding in underwater caves. The Void Runners haven't found them yet." Walker made his decision. "Thompson, you and Hill take our shuttle and bring those survivors here. Davis, keep working on intercepting Void Runner communications. Moore, I need you to continue studying their biology. If we're going to fight them, we need to know their weaknesses." As his team dispersed, Walker stepped outside the hidden bunker. The night sky of Thera was beautiful, 3 moons casting silver light over the landscape. But the beauty was marred by distant fires where Void Runner ships burned forests to clear land for their operations. Elder Thorne joined him, his blue skin pale in the moonlight. "Your people are really coming to fight for us." "Yes," Walker said. "And when they get here, everything changes." In the depths of space, the Phantom Fleet accelerated toward the jump point that would send them hurling toward Epsilon Eridani. On the bridge of the Nemesis, General Reed reviewed battle plans as the ship's AI presented simulations of possible encounters. "Atlas, run scenario Epsilon 7 again," Reed ordered. "Adjust for the new intelligence on Void Runner ship capabilities." The holographic display showed the fleet approaching Thera using the system's asteroid belt for cover, then launching simultaneous strikes on key Void Runner positions. Probability of initial success, 78%. Atlas reported in its calm voice. Probability of complete victory without Legion casualties, 23%. Reed nodded. Those were better odds than most wars began with. Colonel West approached with a final report. All ships report ready, sir. Cryosleep protocols engaged for all troops except essential bridge crew. Very good, Colonel. You should get to your pod as well. West hesitated. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. Do you think the Council made the right call, committing our most elite forces to defend an alien species we just discovered? Reed's eyes remained on the battle simulations. The Void Runners were always going to find Earth eventually. Better to fight them on someone else's planet than our own. He paused. Besides, the Lumari asked for help, and humans have never been good at ignoring a cry for help, even when answering it might cost us everything. As the Phantom Fleet vanished into the jump point, Reed's final thoughts before entering cryosleep were not of the coming battle, but of what Captain Walker's reports had said about the Lumari, a peaceful, kind species who had never known war. They were about to witness humanity at its most terrifying. The Void Runner Command Center stood like a massive black spire in what was once the Lumari capital city. Commander Draz surveyed the mining operations from his observation tower with satisfaction. In 3 cycles, they had extracted more precious metals from this world than from their last 3 conquests combined. The native species had offered no resistance, just like all the others. Commander, sensors detect an anomaly in the asteroid belt, reported his second. Draz dismissed it with a wave. Probably just another meteor shower. Focus on the northern quadrant. The Slades report more Lumari hiding in those mountains. Aboard the Nemesis, now hidden within the asteroid belt of the Theris system. General Reed watched the Void Runner fleet through the ship's advanced sensors. The Legion had arrived 4 days ago and immediately gone into stealth mode. Captain Walker had been brought aboard to brief them on the current situation. They've established 7 major bases, Walker explained, pointing to locations on the holographic map. The command center is here, in the former Lumari capital. Their fleet consists of 20 large warships and about 50 smaller vessels used for troop transport. Reed studied the data with cold precision. Mining operations. Extensive. They're stripping entire continents. And the Lumari. We've managed to save about 4,000. The rest are either dead or taken off-world as slaves. Reed's expression hardened. We can't match them in numbers or firepower, so we won't try. He turned to Colonel West. Prepare strike teams Alpha through Delta for deployment. We hit them where they least expect it, with weapons they've never seen before. That night, as Theris' 3 moons rose in the sky, 4 stealth shuttles detached from the Nemesis. Each carried 12 Ghost Legion soldiers equipped with adaptive camouflage suits and weapons designed specifically for this mission. Team Alpha, led by Major John Stone, approached the Void Runner fuel processing facility. The massive complex converted Theris' native plant life into the biofuel that powered the Void Runner fleet. Remember, Stone whispered to his team, this isn't about killing. It's about crippling their operations. Plant the charges and disappear. The Ghost Legion moved like shadows. Their suits changed color and texture to match their surroundings, making them nearly invisible. The Void Runner guards never saw them coming. Within an hour, Team Alpha had planted explosive devices throughout the facility's critical systems. They retreated to safe distance, and Major Stone pressed the detonator. The explosion wasn't massive. It didn't need to be. Instead, it triggered a cascade of failures in the fuel processing systems. By morning, the damage would be irreparable. Simultaneously, Team Beta infiltrated the Void Runner communications array. Instead of destroying it, they installed a device that would allow Atlas to intercept and manipulate all Void Runner transmissions. Team Charlie targeted the fleet's maintenance docks, sabotaging navigation systems on 5 warships. And Team Delta, perhaps with the most dangerous mission, infiltrated the command center itself to gather intelligence and plant listening devices. By dawn, All teams had returned to their extraction points without losing a single soldier. The Void Runners remained completely unaware that an attack had even occurred, until everything began to fail. Commander Draz was awakened by alarms blaring throughout the command center. "What is happening?" he demanded as he rushed to the control room. "The fuel facility has suffered catastrophic failure," reported his operations officer. "5 of our warships are reporting navigation system malfunctions, and we've lost contact with outposts 3 and 7. Draz's eyes narrowed. "The Lumari couldn't have done this. They don't have the technology or the will to fight." "Sir, we found this at the fuel facility," said a security officer, holding up a small metal object. It was a patch with an unfamiliar symbol, an eagle clutching lightning bolts. "What is it?" Draz asked. "Unknown, but it's not Lumari." In his underground bunker, Elder Thorn watched the Void Runner ships scrambling in confusion, their routine disrupted for the first time since they arrived. "What's happening?" he asked Captain Walker, who had just returned from the Nemesis. Walker allowed himself a small smile. "That, Elder Thorn, is the Ghost Legion announcing their arrival. Not with a declaration of war, but with a whisper that will soon become a scream." Above them, hidden in the asteroid belt, General Reed received the mission reports with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 had succeeded perfectly. The Void Runners now knew they were under attack, but had no idea what they were facing or where the next strike would come from. The hunt had begun. For 3 weeks, the Ghost Legion continued their shadow war against the Void Runners. Supply lines were severed. Communication relays mysteriously failed. Troops disappeared on patrol. The Void Runners, used to being the hunters, suddenly found themselves hunted by an enemy they could rarely see and never catch. Commander Draz slammed his fist against the war table, scattering holographic displays. "Find them," he roared at his officers. "I want these attackers found and destroyed." "We've captured one of their devices," reported his chief scientist, holding up a small sphere. "It appears to be a drone with adaptive camouflage technology, far more advanced than anything we've encountered before." Draz examined the device. "Can you track where these are coming from?" "Yes, Commander. We've detected faint energy signatures in the northern mountains. We believe the enemy has established a base there." Draz's face twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. "Prepare all available forces. We will crush these insects in one strike." On the Nemesis, General Reed reviewed the latest intelligence reports with his command staff. Atlas had intercepted the Void Runner communications and projected their planned assault. "They're committing nearly all their ground forces," Reed observed. "Exactly as we wanted." Colonel West looked concerned. "Sir, the Lumari shelters are in those mountains. If the Void Runners attack with this much firepower..." "We're moving the Lumari tonight," Reed replied. "Captain Walker's team has been evacuating them to the underground caverns on the western continent for days. But we'll leave enough signs of habitation to make the Void Runners believe they found our main base." "And then?" asked Major Stone. Reed's eyes were cold. "Then we show them what happens when they corner a human fighting force." That night, as the last Lumari evacuees were transported to safety, Reed deployed half the Ghost Legion to the mountain base. The soldiers prepared defensive positions that appeared hastily constructed, a convincing trap designed to look like a desperate last stand. At dawn, the Void Runner assault began. Hundreds of transport ships descended on the mountains, deploying thousands of troops. Heavy weapons bombarded the fake human base, and Void Runner soldiers advanced confidently toward what they thought was a cornered enemy. From his command post overlooking the valley, Major Stone watched the Void Runners approach. "They've committed fully to the attack," he reported to General Reed. "All units in position." Reed's voice came through clear on the secure channel. "Execute Operation Hornet's Nest." Stone gave the signal. Suddenly, the mountains came alive with hidden weapon systems. Automated turrets emerged from concealed positions, mines activated beneath the advancing Void Runners. And most devastating of all, the experimental void disruptors fired. Weapons designed to create localized gravitational distortions that ripped apart anything caught in their field. The Void Runner front lines disintegrated. Their commanders pushed more troops forward, believing they were simply facing desperate resistance. They didn't realize they were being channeled into killing zones prepared days in advance. Then, when the Void Runners were fully committed, the main human fleet emerged from hiding. 5 warships decloaked directly above the battlefield and opened fire with precision strikes on Void Runner command vehicles and heavy weapons platforms. Commander Draz watched in horror from his command ship as his ground forces were being systematically destroyed. "What are these creatures?" he demanded, staring at the tactical display. "How can so few inflict such damage against so many?" His tactical officer had no answer. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for an enemy that fought like this, an enemy that turned disadvantage into advantage, that seemed to anticipate their every move. Draz made his decision. "Order all forces to withdraw. We will regroup and bring the full fleet to bear." But withdrawal was exactly what General Reed had planned for. As the Void Runner troops fell back in disarray, Ghost Legion snipers positioned on ridgelines picked off their commanders. Stealth drones tagged their retreat vessels with tracking devices, and the mountain base, now abandoned, detonated in a spectacular explosion that took out even more enemy forces. On the main view screen of the Nemesis, Reed watched the Void Runner's chaotic retreat with cold satisfaction. "Phase 2 complete," he announced to his command staff. "Prepare for Phase 3. In the underground shelters, the Lumari watched recordings of the battle in stunned silence. These humans fought with a ferocity and cunning that seemed impossible. Where the Lumari saw only violence, Elder Thorn recognized something else, a terrible resolve to protect what they had promised to defend. They fight not just with weapons, he told his people, but with their minds. The Void Runners never stood a chance. The battle was over, but the war had just begun, and humanity's most lethal response was about to enter its final phase. Commander Draz stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the remnants of his once mighty invasion force limped back to the fleet. Half his ground troops were dead. 3 warships had been destroyed. And for the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt something unfamiliar: fear. "All remaining ships have returned," Commander reported his second. "Shall we begin bombardment of the planet?" Draz considered the option. They could still burn this world to ash from orbit, but that would not eliminate the new enemy, these humans who fought like nothing they had encountered before. "No," Draz decided. "We retreat to the homeworld. We need reinforcements." As the Void Runner fleet prepared to leave Thera's orbit, General Reed watched from the Nemesis with narrowed eyes. "They're running," Colonel West observed. "Not for long," Reed replied. "Atlas, show me what the tracking devices are telling us." The ship's AI displayed a projected course for the retreating Void Runner fleet. Based on current trajectory and communication intercepts, they appear to be heading toward a star system designated HG 40,307, approximately 42 light-years from here. Reed nodded. "Their homeworld." "Sir," West said carefully, "our mission was to defend Thera. We've succeeded. The Council didn't authorize." "The Council authorized me to eliminate the threat," Reed interrupted. "If we let them retreat, they'll return with a larger force. Not just to Thera, but eventually to Earth." He turned to face his officers. "We have tracking devices on their ships. We have their communication codes. And we have the element of surprise." Major Stone spoke up. "What are you suggesting, General?" "We're going to follow them home," Reed said simply. "And we're going to end this." The decision wasn't unanimous. Captain Walker argued forcefully against it, insisting that defense of Thera was enough. But in the end, Reed's logic prevailed. The Void Runners had shown themselves to be an existential threat not just to the Lumari, but potentially to all peaceful species in this part of the galaxy. 3 days later, the Phantom Fleet followed the Void Runners' trail. leaving behind a small force to protect Thera and help the Lumari rebuild. Elder Thorn stood with Captain Walker as they watched the warships depart. "Will they return?" Thorn asked. Walker nodded. "When it's done." "These humans," Thorn said quietly, "they are both terrifying and wonderful. They came to save us, but I fear what they might become in doing so." Walker had no answer for that. He had seen the look in General Reed's eyes, a cold determination that went beyond mere duty. The journey to the Void Runner homeworld took weeks. Reed used the time to plan meticulously. Atlas analyzed every piece of data they had gathered about Void Runner technology, biology, and tactics. When they arrived at HE 40,307, the human fleet remained cloaked, observing. The star system contained 12 planets, with the fourth being the apparent Void Runner homeworld, a massive gas giant with floating cities suspended in its upper atmosphere. "Incredible," breathed Colonel West as they viewed it through the ship's sensors. "Their entire civilization exists in those floating structures." Reed studied the tactical display, and each structure depends on anti-gravity generators to maintain altitude. Atlas, if those generators were to fail, the structures would fall into the planet's crushing lower atmosphere, the AI confirmed. Nothing would survive. The plan that formed was both elegant and terrible. The Ghost Legion deployed in stealth shuttles to the largest floating cities. Instead of a direct assault, they planted weaponized versions of the same void disruptors they had used on Thera, devices that could create gravitational anomalies powerful enough to overwhelm the anti-gravity systems. The Void Runners never detected them coming. By the time Commander Draz realized humans had followed them home, it was too late. The disruptors activated simultaneously across their world. One by one, the floating cities began to fall. Not all. Reed had specifically targeted military and government structures, sparing civilian areas where possible. But the damage was catastrophic enough. From the Nemesis, Reed watched as Void Runner vessels scrambled in panic, trying to evacuate their falling cities. He opened a channel to all Void Runner frequencies. "This is General Marcus Reed of Earth's Ghost Legion. Your conquest of Thera has ended. Your attacks on peaceful species will end. Your empire of terror is over." His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Surrender now, or we will finish what we've started." When the Phantom Fleet returned to Thera 3 weeks later, they'd brought news of the Void Runner surrender. Their military leadership had been decimated, their fleet reduced to a shadow of its former power, and they had signed a treaty promising never again to attack another species. Elder Thorn received the news with mixed emotions. "You've saved us," he told General Reed during the formal ceremony. "But at what cost to yourselves?" Reed looked out at the recovering planet, where Lumari and humans worked together to rebuild. "That remains to be seen," he answered honestly. As word spread through nearby star systems about what had happened, other species watched with newfound interest and caution. The humans, a species no one had paid attention to before, had answered a simple cry for help with the most lethal response imaginable. The galaxy would never be the same again.